Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Chairman bringing you a brand new show, Conviction, a show where we judge conventions to see if they're worth the hustle. Now, each case is judged by the following categories. Is the break entering breaking, meaning is the price worth it, and how easy is it to get the tickets? Grand theft accommodations. We're judging the hotel blocks and based generally just the transportation to and from the show. And is the show up to code, judging the floor layout and how everything's pretty much held up for consumers coming in. Our first case is June 13th through the 15th. The defendant, E3. Exhibit A is the entering breaking. Back in May 2017, the website opened its doors for all guests to enter. The first 100 people paid $150. The next wave paid $250, and anyone showing up to the show, $995. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty steep fine for anything. Now, in order to get the ticket, one must wait in a digital queue that takes some up to an hour and a half, others 15 minutes. After that, they had to fill out their personal information while making a sign-in. That's all fine and dandy, but they didn't send out the tickets to anyone. No. You actually had to come in person to the convention center to pick up your tickets. The total number of booths were 3. 2 outside by the main entrance to each halls, and 1 inside the west hall left of the escalators between the hours of 10 and 6-ish. Now, at first, I found it a bit unfair for guests to have to pick up their tickets at the show. I mean, most conventions charge a bit less for their standard tickets, roughly $150 at most for a 3-day show. But then again, there's plenty of scalpers they gotta deal with, and I guess in order to prevent this, they actually print out your pass after showing your driver's license or government-issued identification. Yes, I know it sounds peculiar and weird after paying for something to prove that you're the owner of these items, but you know what? It cuts down on those scalpers who charge exorbitant prices for the show. I mean, hopefully New York Comic Con doesn't take lead on this. Exhibit B! Grand Theft Accommodations. Now, before the show, tickets went on sale, giving new guests a chance to get a hotel weeks prior to the actual unveil. Unfortunately, a lot of these hotels were non-refundable, which, let's be honest, many conventions are guilty of. I find it inappropriate to sell hotel rooms at cheaper rates for non-attendees who are already surefire in to the show. Most of us can't really get the time off, let alone the tickets before the good rooms are sold out. Now let's play the devil's advocate. Say someone did risk their funds, got the ticket and hotel. Those folks were given a free shuttle to and from the hotel and show, but those who couldn't afford to do that had to pay a $75 bus pass. Heck, even if their hotel was 2 minutes away from one of the block ones, they wouldn't allow it. Sadly, this was not very well advertised, and many folks had to hoof it or lift it. Now, Los Angeles has a bit of a seedy area around the hall and most areas, which could cause some discomfort for attendees coming to the show if they had to walk. I guess that's the price we're paying if you're gonna go to the show at a decent rate. Initially, they had no form of shuttles to the hotels for anyone, but on the last day, they did something kind of nice. They offered a shuttle to the airport for about $20 a person. I mean, I tried to lift out, and it was about $50 normally if I would have went that way. So it was nice that they offered a little something for us here and there. Exhibit C is the show up to code. The best place to start is how everybody gets into the convention hall. After walking into one of the 2 main doors, everyone is funneled into a chained-off area to stand. Now, this wouldn't be a problem, but a lot of people tend to show up early, so standing for an hour or 2, 3 possibly, can be kind of a pain in the ass, especially when no one's allowed to sit. After a while, security comes through, checking people's IDs to match their badges, make sure no one stole a badge or scalped it. I wouldn't have a problem with this if they hadn't skipped over me. Following this, the show finally opens with everyone sprinting through the walk-through black lights. Yeah, it's a little weird that they had a bunch of what looked like metal detectors with black lights, but that's just to make sure everybody had the legit tickets. Sadly, people rampage straight through, trampling a lot of people. At least it was when I tried to do Nintendo that one morning. I might have been swept up by at least, I want to say 100 people rushing to get to the Nintendo booth for a Cappy. and I may have elbowed somebody in the face after being shoved a couple times without realizing it. Now, mind you, not all the booths were crazy, like the Indie Arcade, the Bethesda, and one or two lines on Namco weren't too bad. Hell, it would have been nice to know that Sony had an app to make appointments for all their booths before the show started each day. Now, one booth I did have an issue with, which I think was very unprepared for the crowds, was Microsoft. Traffic space was set to about 2 people in width. That's it. Me and Hops tried to play Sea of Thieves, but the queue was always capped. So they made everybody wanted to wait in the line for that game, or any of the games, mind you, go all the way up one side of the aisle, and then come back down out the booth and back again. Now, this line leading out kind of makes an issue since people coming in technically would cut the line without even knowing. Then people stood near the entrance for Sea of Thieves while they're giving out free items, but they wouldn't leave, clogging up the flow. And then when the queue finally opened, people who were right there, who may not have been just walking for an hour and a half like me and Hops, get in. That was messed up on so many levels that it actually broke poor Hops' heart, and he stormed off. Unfortunately, I had his phone at the time, and we were separated for about 3 hours. Frantically, I searched for him to the point I went to 3 different offices, then the main convention desk, finding out each time there is no PA system they could access to call someone. Granted, Hops is an adult, but if they allowed children to the show, could you imagine the chaos of a parent trying to find them in that big-ass hall? Let's not even get started about the hostility I felt by the industry and media. Now, when I waited in line, I could hear some of them snickering about how the show was ruined by the attendees taking up space and such. I mean, all these people who normally weren't there clogging up, they were rude and such, yada yada. Granted, the media had plenty of areas just for them. I mean, they had the concourse area, which was several booths of privacy. Sony had a whole giant booth size of Sony's other booth just for them. It was about maybe a size of a city block sealed off. Hopefully next year they'll open more doors for the fans, or at least move the media and industry areas to someplace else where we couldn't see it. The closing statements and the sentence. I sent this show, E3 2017, 7.5 out of 10 with probation. The show did suck for the second day, mostly due to the crowd's frustration with the system, but once you stray away from Sony, Ubisoft, and the AAA booths, there were still some fun things to find, like the Saren Kagura signing, the gaming ball pit, the indie arcade, and the cool folks you meet online and start chatting with. Like my hero always says, it's a bunch of little things that matter. That makes the show more worthwhile. So if you're going to the show only for the big name games that everyone wants to see, it may not be worth your time. But enjoying everything as you go, the flow, while waiting on the 40-minute lines, you might have something pretty fun there. E3 may have been around for a while, but it's still a young show for the public to afford. If the prices are adjusted down a bit, it's something a little more reasonable than they already were. Some of the booths are more accommodated for larger crowds, or at least a system for fans to check in at the time slot for a time slot system. It'd be so much easier. I didn't go to the panels, but next time I would like to go to give it a shot, or at least would love to sit in the press conference live instead of online. So for those of you who think that he wants to go to E3 next year, I would highly recommend it if you live a little bit closer and, you know what, you don't mind staying in Comic-Con size crowds. So that's my final judgment, folks. Don't forget to like, share, and